So recently I decided that I just wanted to play through all the FromSoft games again because I love doing that every once in a while. And this time through, I decided I'm going to keep a list on my phone of a couple factors of each boss just so I can look back on it in the future when I inevitably do this again and kind of see if my opinion on them has changed at all. So I decided I was going to make a little tier list as well just because I'm a visual kind of guy and I like to compare them with each other that way. And these tiers I figured I'm going to base off of the factors that I wrote down on my phone at least of what I think contributes to being a good boss. These factors are if it has a gimmick, it could either increase it or decrease it in the tier list, depending if it's a good gimmick or not. The difficulty of the fight, how fair it is versus just how annoyingly challenging it is. The boss design, music and arena, I included into one of atmosphere, right? If the music is really good and the arena sucks, I think that it could still have good atmosphere and vice versa. And then finally, and probably the one that weighs the most, is the gameplay of the boss. How's the moveset? Is it fun to dodge? Does it allow for various build varieties to still have a good challenge and still be fair? And all this stuff kind of comes together, right? And it just forms into a tier and how good I think the boss is. And finally, I just think it's important to throw out that this is mostly talking about the original Demon Souls. If something is inherently a lot better in the remake, I might mention it, but I also haven't played the remake in a while and I didn't feel like replaying the remake for this. So it's mostly just the original Demon Souls that we're talking about with this. And then finally, I am trying to be very harsh with the rankings, right? So you're going to see a lot of these bosses in D and C. I think it's worth mentioning really quickly that I do think that a 5 is average rather than a 7. So for me, the C tier is average. There's nothing wrong with the C tier, and the D tier is just slightly below average. I don't want it to be misconstrued that I think these bosses in these tiers are bad by any means, but it is difficult to explain all this while I'm ranking the bosses, or even now, just because I want the video to be fairly concise, because I try to go into a decent amount of detail, but I don't want to overdo it and make it stupid long. But yeah, just try to keep all this in mind when you're looking at the tier list. So starting with Vanguat Demon, I am going to go in order of how I experienced the bosses. My order might be a little messed up because I like jumping around a lot when I play Demon Souls, but Vanguat Demon, no matter what, is always going to be the first boss you fight. And I think he is the perfect shining example of a fine fight. He doesn't have any sort of gimmick, right? Regular fight there. His design is very plain. He just kind of looks like a regular demon that you might see in a level, which is funny because you see him later in a level as a regular demon. He fits like a mini boss aesthetic pretty well, in my opinion. Not as glorious as the first boss, but I don't think the first boss is really supposed to be super glorious. It's kind of there to just show you what you're getting into. He's scarier than all the enemies you've seen up to this point, which were more humanoid enemies, and this is what a demon looks like, which you're going to be facing throughout the entire game. So I think he sets that precedent pretty well of the demons looking a lot different, looking scary and menacing. I like his 3 eyes. I think that's like a pretty iconic part of the design, as well as the little wings he has on his back that he uses in his moveset, which I like when the boss's design is implemented into the moveset. I think that's good design. And then in terms of atmosphere, I think the music is quite good. There's some like high horns that you hear that kind of pierce through. It's a bit on the lower end that you're not really noticing the music throughout the fight. Plus also it's your first boss, so you're kind of caught up in the moment, but those horns still kind of poke through and they're almost like violent jabs at the player, which I kind of feel adds to the stress of the fight, right? Of this being your first demon, your first boss. Those horns are kind of just like poking through the sound in the background, which I think is a nice touch. Other than that, the music's pretty whatever. It's not really something I'd listen to outside of the boss fight, but it's decent boss fight music. The arena is kind of just a yellow circle with torches on it. I think the arena is quite boring to look at visually. I don't like the yellow pattern in the arena very much at all. I like the remakes version of the arena better, to be totally honest with you, with the light shining through. It is a bit more plain looking, but personally I just like that better than the yellow arena for whatever reason. And the boss's moveset is very fair. It has very telegraphed attacks with its little axe hand. I like that it has kind of a get off me attack with the butt slam, because most of the time you're just going to be hugging the boss's butt the entire fight because that's the best spot to be. And like I mentioned before, the get off me attack is utilizing the wings as part of the design, which I love so much. So bonus points for that for me. But otherwise, pretty plain moveset. Like I said, this is kind of a mini boss moveset where there's nothing too complicated that you can't spot dodge your first time through. But since it is the first boss, it's not meant to be complicated. And this is kind of the formula that gets utilized throughout the entire series all the way to the Asylum Demon. He has a very similar telegraph moveset, and I think it all spawned from the Vanguat Demon. So, like I said, everything that he does is fine. I never look forward to fighting the Vanguat Demon really, but I also don't dread it. So I think he's a perfect, fine boss. So moving on to the Phalanx. It's not a gimmick boss fight, but it is a Demon Souls boss fight in the sense that most of them have some sort of gimmick anyway. Even if I don't classify it as a total gimmick boss fight, I would consider a gimmick fight to be a fight that changes up the formula of dodge, attack, and the Phalanx still has that formula. However, of course, it is very weak to fire damage. The entire level gives you fire damage that you can then use on the Phalanx once you get there. The shields are going to absorb a lot of your attacks, so if you ignore the gimmick, you're going to have a very tough time with the fight. However, it just does have that classic Dark Souls roll attack formula, so I don't truly consider it to be a gimmick, therefore I'm going to say it's not. And this is going to apply to a lot of the bosses on the list that you might consider to be a gimmick fight, which is totally fine. But just since there's so many gimmicks with these bosses, I don't want to consider all of them gimmick fights, so I'm going to be pretty harsh about what I actually do consider a gimmick fight. So with that out of the way, moving on to the design of the Phalanx, I love the design of the Phalanx so much. It's criminally underrated. I love that you see little pieces of it throughout the level leading up to it once you actually unlock that gate and they start coming out. And the idea of a boss being an army of many, which all individually are extremely weak regular enemies that you're, plowing on your way there. And then when you get to the boss, all of a sudden when you have to fight 30 of them at once, it's not so easy anymore, right? It's so cool how they have the shields that they use to protect the core with the little spears that are poking out. There's some around the perimeter of it. It feels almost like you're fighting an entire army of like a civilization of these little glob thingies. And I think that's so cool. In terms of atmosphere of the boss fight, the arena is very mediocre. This just looks like it would be part of the level, to be totally honest with you, with the pillars and everything. It's very boring. There's nothing special about this arena at all. However, I think the music carries the atmosphere of the fight. And again, quick disclaimer, I am not a music expert. In fact, if I name an instrument and that's not even in the track, I apologize. I know nothing about music. I just know what I like to listen to. And I know that the Phalanx's OST is really, really nice to listen to. It has what I believe to be a violin that's kind of going rapid fire in the background. It fades out and then it comes back in rapid fire again. It's a very addictive tune and I find myself humming it. However, during the fight, it is drowned out in the background a little bit, especially if you're using fire bombs and whatnot. There's a lot of sound effects going on, so you might not hear it, but usually you do hear that violin shine through, which I do enjoy. And then finally, the gameplay and the difficulty of the boss are pretty mediocre with both. If you know the quote gimmicky part of it with the fire, the difficulty is 0 out of 5. It's very hard to die unless you're standing still completely. And the boss's moveset is very plain and boring. It's more of an annoyance than an actual threatening attack, because they're just chucking the spears at you like they did earlier in the level, which really just interrupts you chucking a firebomb at it. It's just a projectile off at this point between you and the boss, which it's unique. It's just not very fun, especially when compared to a lot of the other bosses. So unfortunately, I do think that gameplay part of it holds it back a lot. Again, the design's really cool, music's great, but arena, gameplay, difficulty all kind of drag it down. So next up is Tower Knight, and similarly to the Phalanx, it has a gimmicky kind of gameplay, but it's not really what I'd consider to be a gimmick boss. The design is a bit plain, right? It's just kind of a giant suit of armor. I think the massive shield is very cool, and it does do a good job of achieving that whole David and Goliath feeling where you feel very minuscule compared to him. His stomps are dangerous. You don't want to be near it. The massive spear when it comes down is also extremely threatening when it covers your entire screen because it's just so big. He has that little pointy part of his helmet, which always kind of stood out to me. And finally, when you're swinging at his ankles, the blue spewing liquidy thing is pretty cool, right? I like that that kind of starts to amp up as you're doing more damage to the ankle, so you know it's about time for him to fall over. I think that's a really good design decision that coincides with the gameplay quite well. Now, in terms of atmosphere, I think Tower Knight might take the cake for best atmosphere in Demon Souls. I love the Tower Knight arena, and despite it looking very, very plain, it, much like Phalanx, just looks like it's part of the level. It doesn't really even look like an arena per se, but the crossbowmen totally carry it. Their addition in this fight, I think, is really cool. I think it adds a lot to the atmosphere of the fight to where it feels like you're fighting a force rather than just one individual boss. The fact you go up the stairs, clear out the crossbowmen while the Tower Knight's shooting those beams at you, which given aren't very threatening, but it just shows a sense of urgency that you need to get these crossbowmen dealt with so you can focus on the main threat. And the music of this fight is just so iconic. My first time playing through the remake, right, which is a lot of people might consider the worst version of the music, I remember this theme out of all of them stood out to me, and I was constantly humming it even after beating the game, having beaten Tower Knight however long ago. It's just such an iconic theme. I love the chanting of the theme, how it almost feels like, again, what I said before with the arena, how you're fighting multiple people and it's like an actual militia against you or a small army. The chanting kind of adds to that, right? It's almost like I can imagine the crossbowmen in the background trying to hype up the Tower Knight to beat your ass, and they're chanting, trying to get him hyped for it. It's such a good theme, and it fits the fight perfectly. It also includes these very deep horn noises in the background, which I think is really good because it feels heavy in the music, much like how the Tower Knight is very heavy in his movements. Speaking of movement, the boss gameplay is pretty mediocre for the most part. You're swiping at his ankles, dodging his attacks. The big shield slam is really cool. I like that a lot. It's very scary. You see a massive hunk of iron coming down on you and you have to get out of the way. But it is just kind of you swiping at his ankles. He falls over. You pray that he falls into an area where you can get to his head. Swipe at his head. It does a lot of damage, and rinse and repeat. There's nothing crazy about the moveset. A lot of AoE slamming attacks, which makes sense because, again, he's giant, heavy, and you just are an ant to him. But nothing really super fun to dodge. It's very spacing, which is fine, but it's just not my favorite thing in the world. All that being said, though, I think Tower Knight is a very good fight. It's a very iconic part of Demon Souls. He's a really good fight, very enjoyable, and I usually look forward to him a lot. So the Armor Spider. It's not a gimmick fight, and its design is frankly a bit boring. It's a giant spider. I like how he interacts with the atmosphere of the arena, right? His legs are kind of like on the wall a little bit, and you really can tell how massive he is. But again, it's just kind of a giant spider. It's metallic-y, which I guess is cool, but nothing too interesting. In terms of atmosphere, I do like that moving towards the Iron Spider, you start to see the cobwebs before you even get to the boss arena, kind of knowing that something's going to come up with the spider. The tunnel part of the arena is cool on paper, right? You don't usually see narrow tunnels in addition to having a huge boss like this, but it just ends up being annoying because it's used as a tool to coincide with the boss's moveset, which would usually be a good thing, but every move that it's supposed to work with is the boss's worst moves. So I end up hating the tunnel because I hate those moves from the boss. And then the rest of the arena has cobwebs everywhere, very standard stuff with a spider enemy. It is cool how you can interact with the cobwebs and they web you, but the effect of getting webbed is annoying. Again, it's just not a fun thing to deal with. Then in terms of music, it is good. There's a constant drum beat in the background, which I like a lot to kind of get you going. And there's a horn buildup, which I find very unique to this track, where it goes up, 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 and then you expect kind of a climax of it, but it never really does that, and then it just kind of drops back down in steps as well, which I like the going up and going down in steps with the horn tune, but otherwise it felt a bit lacking, and it was good background music but nothing crazy. Then the best part of the fight, the gameplay. The gameplay is horrible. The flamethrower move where you have to run all the way to the back of the tunnel is the most unfun thing in the world, and it works with the tunnel, like I said, and it works with getting webbed to where you're slower and you can't roll properly, and it's just awful. There's the beams that he shoots of web, which will also slow you, which are also annoying. They're not hard to dodge. It's, again, just annoying. And the only real attack that I remember from the boss is the kind of swipe he does with his two talons forward, which is just a very basic swipe that you can roll under, and then he'll slam to the ground, I guess, where you just beat on his face. The high points of the fight are kind of mediocre, and the lows are extremely annoying to deal with, so I think he's a bad fight. He's one of the few bosses in Demon Souls that I actively do not want to fight, and I wish I could just skip over. However, I will say the Iron Spider makes the next fight look a lot better, which is the Flamelurker. So Flamelurker is the first real non-gimmick boss other than Vangoat Demon that you fight in the game. There's nothing you really do special. It's a very pure hit, dodge, hit fight. His design is really cool. It's a cool mix of a fleshy humanoid mixed with a fiery demon. My one critique is that the fire is a bit too bright. I don't know if this was me because I'm playing on an emulator. I don't know how it looked on the original PlayStation, but sometimes it's so bright that it covers his body and I literally cannot see what he looks like because the fire is so bright. But during the cutscene, you get a really good look of him. I think he's the perfect amount of grotesque too regular, right? They're not overdoing the design of him being gross. I don't think he's gross, but he also just makes me kind of uncomfortable to look at because, like I said, there's the mix of the exposed muscle tissue with the very sharp, stony parts of him. His design's very interesting looking, right? Like, he would not be a field enemy at all. I wouldn't mind the fire getting toned down a little bit or maybe darkened to not totally overlap on the rest of his body. A lot of his attacks as well have fiery explosions that are just super duper bright, and it almost looks like a shockwave of sunlight rather than a shockwave of fire at times. The atmosphere of this boss isn't anything crazy. The arena's a bit plain looking. I like the little pools of lava as an arena hazard you have to deal with. It's very spacious, nothing annoying to fight around. Just nothing about it really stands out to me as anything super duper special. The music is similarly kind of mid, right? It's very menacing, which I like. It's slow and it's deep, but I just feel like it doesn't fit Flamelurker very well because out of all the bosses, Flamelurker is probably one of the fastest and most aggressive. So I just feel like his track should have been a little bit more fast and aggressive to match it, right? I do like how malicious the track sounds, especially once you die to him a couple times and you start to legitimately fear him. The track goes along with it. But again, I just feel like it should have been a little bit more hype, a little bit faster paced. Maybe this track could have belonged to a different boss. In terms of difficulty, this boss is very hard. I'd say it's probably the hardest in the entire game. He feels like he's in a unique spot too, because you go from the Iron Spider, which for all intents and purposes is fairly easy other than being annoying, and then you get to him and it's just a total step up in difficulty. No gimmicks, you just gotta power through this and win. He doesn't feel overtuned. However, I will say when I played through, I actually left and came back because I was getting annoyed with having to do that drop down run back to him. I don't know if that's the best way to get to him, but it was annoying me. So I was like, whatever, I'll deal with it later. So you might see in the gameplay, I'm getting completely whooped. And then later I come back and I'm just over leveled and I'm face tanking all his attacks and it's stupid, but whatever. His gameplay is really fun though. I like that a lot of his attacks have explosions on them. Like I said before, he's very ferocious and he feels powerful with every swing he uses. And he almost feels like an advanced form of the Vangoat Demon where there's less telegraphed attacks. You have to kind of react a lot faster. He does more damage. The explosions might cloud your vision of what's next to come. And I think that's a good thing, right? Being based off Vangoat Demon or being a better version of him, that was already a good gameplay style. So this is just better. So Flamelurker is a good fight. Okay, then like I said before, after I lost the Flamelurker like 3 times, I went a different route. So these next couple bosses might seem like a weird order. So I moved on to Fool's Idol after that. And Fool's Idol, I think, had a lot of potential to be a really great fight, but it's kind of held back a little bit, much like Phalanx in that regard. Her gimmicky part of the fight is that she'll respawn if you don't kill the guy who was up top, which is fine, but I think that's a bit annoying because if you didn't know about it, as far as I know, there's no telltale signs that you need to do it. Maybe there's an item description out there that has 3 words in it that would have told me to do that, but my first playthrough, I didn't know that, so I was a bit confused. Then you find out after you fight her once, and then having to fight her a second time really points out the flaws of the fight, I think, and brings her down a lot. I almost wish that the guy was either earlier in the level, more in your way, or he was in the boss fight arena, something like that I think would have been done a bit better. Getting into her design, I like it a lot. I like that she looks like a non-threat. She has very fair skin. She looks younger. She looks like someone that you really shouldn't be fighting as a boss. She looks like someone that you should be fighting to protect instead. Her multiple arms and the little book she holds are pretty cool. I like her wrist jewelry as well, the bracelets. Her clothing is a bit boring, right? It just kind of looks like a robe, but again, that's the whole point. She's supposed to look unsuspecting and someone that's safe. So for her music, unlike Flamelurker, her track fits her boss perfectly. There's a very soothing yet unsettling piano playing throughout, or just a couple tones over and over again. Then when you really get into the meat of it, it feels like someone just slams their hand on the piano, and then you realize, oh, this person is actually a threat that I need to deal with. And the design of the boss coincides with the music so beautifully because they're both kind of hiding that malicious part of it, but it comes out at one point, whether it's her attacking you or the music, the whole piano slam part. It's very good. The arena is also quite good. I like the church aesthetic of it. I like the pews that block you, and they go into the gameplay a little bit, but kind of like the armor spider, I find it to be just more annoying rather than anything else. The enemies are also just there. You can ignore them. They're pretty much non-threats, but they might slip you in the background if you totally ignore them. My only real complaint, and I never thought I'd ever say this about original Demon Souls because I have the total opposite problem throughout the entire game, is I do wish it was a little bit darker in the cathedral itself. I think that could have played up the atmosphere if it was just a tad darker, the candle light mattered a bit more, and then she blended it with the dark a bit, but that's just my preference and opinion, so it doesn't really influence the ranking. Now, all of that is really good and it sounds great, and then much like the Phalanx, unfortunately you get to the actual gameplay of the boss and it sucks really bad and I hate it. She kind of just stands there, or floats there I guess, and you whop on her, and then she'll teleport after you hit her enough, and she makes duplicates of herself, and you have to find which one's the real one. And she does this awesome thing where she'll freeze you if you walk into one of these crests she'll put on the floor, and she can just spawn it under you if you're in the wrong spot at the wrong time, which is really annoying. Her only real attack that I know of is that she'll shoot a lightning bolt at you, and it's just very boring overall as a gameplay point of view. She's not hard at all. You might get caught in a crest and then whopped from 2 different directions with a lightning bolt, but other than that, you really have to be just standing still to get killed by her. And again, I just get so frustrated because I think this fight had so much potential if maybe halfway through she turned into a more malicious looking form all of a sudden, and now she's attacking you with her hands. I don't know, something. It would have been really cool, but unfortunately, I just feel like the gameplay is very half-baked, so it makes the boss very meh. So again, I was jumping around a little bit in my playthrough, and next up is Leechmonger. Leechmonger's design is really cool. I like that he's just made up of a bunch of leeches, but other than that, he's just like a brown blob on my screen, and visually he's not pleasing to look at, which I get. He's not supposed to be visually pleasing to look at, but things can be gross and visually pleasing to look at. I don't know how to describe that or explain that, but I feel like that could be true. They're not mutually exclusive to one another. And I feel like Leechmonger's design just totally misses. It might be in part to that awesome Demon Souls lighting, that there's just a green tint to the arena and it just makes everything look gross, him more so. Like on paper, I love his design of being made up of a bunch of leeches. I just think in the game, it doesn't come out right. I'm sure if I was looking at the concept art for it, it would look awesome. But there's just something about the in-game model I really don't like. I don't like how it stretches around. It just looks like the textures are stretching rather than more leeches are being formed, if that makes sense. Like, it'll just be one leech that gets pulled really long. I don't love his design. Then the arena, like I said before, has that green tint to it from the disgusting poison water at the bottom that you get leeches in if you walk in it. There's weird verticality that you have to walk down, which I don't feel like adds anything at all to the boss fight other than an additional 7 seconds that it takes for me to get to the bottom. I also don't love the music. There's a lot of quick struts on the violin, so it kind of gives you a feeling of anxiety, which is fine, but that's what all the boss themes do for the most part. There's nothing really unique about it that stands out to me. It's not something I would be humming or remember. Then the gameplay is also whatever. He does this attack where he flails his arms, which is annoying. Like I said before, if you walk in the water, you get the leeches on you, which I think just drain your health very slowly, so it's not that big of a deal. It does add a little bit of pressure, especially if you don't know what it does and you're like, oh wow, I'm covered in leeches now. But his actual attacks are all very mediocre. When you get hit, it doesn't feel super fair because chances are you got hit off of one of his attacks that comes out super quick for no reason and extends his arm 30 feet towards you, which is, you know, it's whatever. He's just a very forgettable meh boss. All of a sudden, he pops up, I fight him, I win, usually first try, and then I forget he exists until I play through the game again. The Dirty Colossus falls into a similar boat as Leechmonger, albeit I think he is a bit better than Leechmonger, but he is also quite forgettable. His design is great. He just looks like a bunch of garbage put together with some fleshy, rocky parts, as well as some parts that are just not organic. He has like a swarm of bugs flying around his head. You can just tell that this thing smells horrible, which is really good design, right? But as unique and cool as he is, he's also just a bit boring to look at. He has a lot of pieces going on, but they all kind of mesh together. I don't know if it's because he still has the structure of a person with legs, arms, torso, whatnot, but there is something about his design that just lets him be a bit forgettable. Much like that, the arena is also forgettable, just a bunch of wood planks in a wide open area, nothing really cool or interesting about it at all that plays into the design of the boss. And keeping in the same theme, his theme is very forgettable and boring. It has like a tuba playing, I think, repetitive notes, and it's just extremely repetitive and background noise to the fight. It's never something you would go out of your way to listen to or experience. And for his gameplay, really gonna break the mold here, try something new, is very forgettable as well, right? It's just the same telegraphed wide swing attacks. He doesn't have a lot of attacks, nothing too cool. He does have a cool attack where he shoots the little clouds of bugs at you, which adds some movement elements to the fight in terms of positioning, but it's really just not enough. I don't think most players would die to him even on a first attempt just because of how telegraphed his attacks are, and he goes down quite quick, so all of these things just make him very forgettable. That being said, I do think he is a fine fight just because there's nothing inherently bad about him other than the atmosphere, so he's just very middle plane run-of-the-mill. Okay, now for Maiden Goatstraea, this might be an extremely hot take that no one will agree with, but I think Maiden Goatstraea is a really good boss fight. Now, this is a fully fledged gimmick fight because you're really fighting two enemies, which is the Maiden herself, then her Guardian dude. However, the Guardian dude doesn't attack you like most of the NPCs in the game. Instead, he's solely trying to defend her, so he kind of stands in one spot blocking your path with his shield up and only really attacks you when you get too close to him or attack him. So I'm going to talk about Goatstraea first because she is the demon. Her design is a bit on the plain side, right? But I think it serves her very well. The whole point is that she's supposed to look like just this innocent, pure woman who you can't see being a demon, and I think her plain white robe plays into that quite well. Of course, the white robe is symbolizing some form of purity, which completely goes against the fact that she's an archdemon. She is a canonic good person because she's in that horrible level trying to help everyone there who's suffering. And her design shows all of these assets of her without you needing to even know the lore, right? If you're looking at Goatstraea and you're playing the boss fight, you kind of start to question, why am I even killing her? She doesn't seem like a bad person. Especially since Garl Vinland doesn't even attack you, right? He mostly is just defending her. Garl Vinland's design is a bit more on the plain side. He looks like a church knight, which is cool still. I like his big hammer he has that he smashes you with. That's always awesome. But aside from individual character design, the actual design of the fight in terms of framing, right, where Garl Vinland is defending her on the stairs, he's stopping your advancement. It's two separate bosses. She stays in the disgusting swamp water. It's such a great design. The design of the boss room itself isn't anything special. There is a lot of visual storytelling, like I said, with her in the dirty, disgusting corpse water with all the dead bodies by her and the other people almost praying to her that are on the higher cliff with you. It's cool when Garl Vinland Aura walks out of the corpse pile up to meet you. And the arena does feel like it's just part of the level, like I was using as a negative in the earlier arenas. It doesn't feel like a boss fight arena. But for this specific boss, I think that's a good thing because they're not really supposed to feel like a boss fight to begin with. So the area feeling like a plain level really builds into that. And the OST is incredible for Goatstraea. It is such a good song because the vibe that this song gives off isn't that of you being a triumphant hero about to slay another demon. I almost see it as the theme is playing for them. The music itself is very fast-paced and anxious, but it feels like a final stand, almost like a triumphant last holdout, which doesn't make sense for the player character because this is just another day in the office, right? You're just slaying another demon. But for them, this is their all or nothing stand against you. And I can't explain it properly because I don't know enough about music. And I don't know why it gives me that feeling, but it really does feel like it's their theme that they're using to motivate them to fight you, which I love so much, and that's such a unique thing I don't experience in any of the other games. However, the gameplay, of course, there has to be something bad stopping this from being the best fight in the entire game, is pretty whatever. Vinland is cool the way he blocks your path, but he is also quite annoying. At least when I fought him, he pretty much one-shot me no matter what. It's not hard to not get hit by his attacks and dodge. You just kind of hit, roll back, but that's not very fun. He could also parry you, which I died to like twice. which I didn't even know he could parry you until he just does it, and then you just get totally obliterated. Then once you're done with Vinland, you get to Astraea, and you just either talk to her and she dies, or you hit her a couple times. I think she has like force or something that can repel you, but it's nothing serious. The fight is quite easy. As long as you don't get parried by Vinland and don't let him hit you, then you're gonna first try it. It's not a difficult fight. The gameplay's pretty horrible for it as well. Like I said, from a thematic point of view, it's awesome, right? The gameplay's great from that point of view, but from an actual boss fight point of view, not so much. I can't put Astraea any lower than good because of the thematics in the boss. I would almost say she's great, and I want to put her in great, but I just feel like the gameplay being as bad as it is, even if it was just a little bit better, if it had like I don't even know, Vangoat Demon levels of gameplay, then I would put it in great, but it's just really more so annoying having to fight Vinland than anything else. So it is a good fight. Okay, so next is the Adjudicator, and this is another one of those bosses which I kind of feel meh about. It has a gimmick in the same way Tower Knight does, where you can only really do damage to the bird on its head, and you have to kind of stance break him, I guess, to get access to the bird for melee, or you could use a bow. The design of the Adjudicator is quite cool. I like the gold, right? His entire body is gold, including the glowing bird. There's a lot of jewelry on him. It screams gluttony as soon as you look at him, and I think it's achieved very well without being over the top. Obviously, he's super fat, but it doesn't feel like stupidly fat and just fat for no reason. It feels like there's a purpose, I think, because of the jewelry and gold on him. I also love the top portion of his design, to where his head got cut where his mouth is, because you could still have his tongue and you can kind of see like the bottom lip of where his teeth would be. But then you totally lose the top portion of the head, but keep the crown with the bird. I think that looks really, really interesting. It's almost like a gaping hole with only the crown on display, again going into that whole gluttonous part of the boss. The arena has similar verticality to Leechmonger, except this time it actually has a purpose of you can shoot the bird with a bow, and to do so, being higher than the boss is very helpful. So I do kind of like the wrapping staircase around the arena. I think that is just a good addition, and it makes the boss fight kind of memorable, because when I think back on this boss, I'm almost thinking of him from a higher perspective, like me, like vertically being higher than him. Like I just remember the boss in that way. The music of the boss is okay. It has a lot of repeating notes, which I'm not a fan of, and it is on purpose, because at one point it literally plays the same note 10 plus times in a row. I do feel that it is a bit background noisy, where nothing really stands out in a crazy way that makes me go, oh my gosh, let me turn up the music, or let me actually listen to this theme. So overall, the atmosphere of the fight is a bit plain. The staircase is unique and memorable, but nothing too crazy. Gameplay is very similar. Like I said, you need to be hitting the bird to do any real damage. He has a blade in his stomach that you need to be hitting, which will stance break him, to where then you can waylay on the bird. Very simple stuff, very plain. The one notable move he has that I remember, other than the cleaver chops, is his tongue attacks. One of the tongue attacks hits you at a higher altitude, which makes sense because you can't just farm him from up top with a bow. He needs some way to defend himself. It's just the attack itself I don't love, because it feels like it comes out really quickly and it always seems to hit me somehow, even if I think I'm dodging it. Otherwise, the melee attacks are just whatever. That whole aspect of the boss is whatever. The boss itself is pretty meh, I'd say. So right after the Adjudicator, you go straight to the Old Hero, which I think is a fantastic gimmicky fight without being a full gimmick fight. Much like the Tower Knight, it influences how you play, but it also doesn't necessarily change up that dodge attack playstyle, which I'm very fond of. You can immediately tell that something's up based on the design of the boss. He has the bandages around the upper portion of his face so he can't see, and you can tell, I think, more so that he can't see based on how he's moving around the arena. His walking animation isn't that of confidence or pursuing you, it's more so that he's feeling his way around, right? He has one hand in front of him, he's trying to feel for pillars, he has the sword cocked back ready to go, but you can tell he doesn't necessarily know where he's going to be swinging it. His clothes stand out a lot because it's more so a tribal set of clothing. There's some feathers on there, a bit of gold beads. Him as a whole is quite gold as well. He's shining gold for the most part. And his massive sword that curves around his back, it's basically the entire size of his body, is just really awesome. So yeah, his design overall is really good. There's nothing too bad about it. I like his mouth too. Oh, that's ripped open. That just is grotesque and makes you not want to look at it. but it doesn't feel like it's grotesque for the reason of being grotesque. It feels like it fits the rest of his design of that he was injured and that he's not fighting you at his full strength. The atmosphere of the fight is great. I think the arena is dope. The fact that you're fighting in the catacombs still. I like the pillars and how they can play into the fight of you hiding around them, trying to hide from the massive sword swings from behind the pillar. I think a couple of them clip through, but I could be wrong. The OST is also really fitting for this fight. It's very slow and methodical at first, then all of a sudden it picks up a little bit, right? Much like the boss, how once he spots you, he just starts running at you. It feels like a pursuit sort of theme rather than a fighting theme, which I think plays into the boss perfectly because he's literally looking for you the entire boss fight. The gameplay itself is a bit meh to me just because it is a lot of hiding, pot shots, going back, pot shot, going back, which is cool, and it's a change of pace from the usual very action-oriented fight, but it gets a little tedious, I think, towards the end. Of course, this playstyle is optional. You can just fight him like a regular boss, be right in front of him, and deal with it that way. I just like to fight the bosses trying to use their gimmick as much as possible because it feels more intentional. His swings remind me of Flamelurker a bit as well, to where getting hit with them is just certain death. It feels very powerful and impactful. You really don't want to be getting hit with them regardless of how much damage they do. You see rocks flying up when he slams the ground with the massive sword, and you know it's going to hurt if you get hit by it. Overall, he is a good fight. His gameplay is fine. The atmosphere is really good. Design's great. I do like this guy a lot. He is one of the better Demon Souls bosses for sure. So he's followed up by Storm King, which I think is one of the weaker bosses in the entire series. It is the definition of a tried and true golden gimmick boss. You need the Storm Ruler. That's the only way you can do damage to him. It totally changes up the gameplay. You have to hit the little guys out of the sky first, and the big guy comes in, and then you have to hit him like, I don't know, 8 times or something with the Storm Ruler. It's whatever. I think the gimmick kind of gets old once the whole novelty of using the Storm Ruler wears off. Then you're just waiting for an opportunity to hit him. And the fact that it's a limited amount of damage and it's just repeating the same cycle of him flying around over and over is kind of annoying. His design is cool, and it's very threatening when you see how much larger he is than the other rays in the sky. But nothing about it is super scary to me. It just looks like a malformed stingray. It feels more just like a super enemy rather than a cool, awesome boss. And especially with the name, like Storm King, and this is what the Storm King is, really? The arena's cool. I like being on the shore. You're finally out of the catacombs and you see the sky again. The pillars everywhere are pretty dope as well. They play into the boss fight to where you can hide behind them from the little guys when they shoot the crystal things at you. Then the OST I find to be very boring. I think the fight itself is boring. With a boring OST makes me want to go to sleep while I'm doing this fight. Nothing about it really stands out. Pretty heavy drum in the background that's a constant throughout the entire fight, which is good because it shows how huge he is, and the fact that his wings are making an impact with every flap he takes. Wind is blowing up from the ground. It's cool in that regard. I just don't think it's good enough to really stand out and be something I look up to listen to afterwards. And I touched on the gameplay a lot when I talked about the gimmick, but like I said before, you're just spamming the Storm Ruler. It's cool for 10 seconds, then all of a sudden I want it to be over and I get tired of the boss, so it's really not all that good. Overall, I just think it's a bad fight. There's no real saving grace about it. Maybe if the music was incredible or something, I could put it higher, but it's cool for 5 seconds, then I just want it to be over. I wish I could skip the fight on repeated playthroughs, and it just feels very boring and tedious. And while I'm on this whole negativity bandwagon, I'm going to talk about Dragon God, which is my least favorite fight in all of Demon Souls, one of my least favorite fights in the series. The only redeeming quality about Dragon God is his design is pretty cool because he's a massive dragon looking dude. His teeth are scary, his multiple eyes are scary. His hand is just so big. The fact that you're like half of his finger in size is very intimidating and worrisome during the fight. I like you don't see his whole body. I like that he's basically part of the arena itself. And the arena and atmosphere that come along with him are both pretty good, right? You're in the ruins and you have to interact with the environment and arena itself to actually complete the fight, and the OST is like a sneaking theme, which again goes along with the fight. The OST serves its purpose, but it's nothing crazy, and it's very, very background noisy. It doesn't hype you up. It does set the mood well, though, for trying to tell you what you need to do in terms of sneaking. And you've probably noticed I didn't talk about the gimmick at the beginning like I usually do, because the gimmick and gameplay I think are so horrible, I had to save it for the end. You need to sneak around, break these pillars, stay out of his eyesight to activate 2 crossbows, which then allow you to attack his head directly. I cannot stand the sneaking aspect of it, because call me stupid or say I am just a total blockhead, but I can't tell where he's looking all the time because he has like 4 eyes on one side of his face, and how am I supposed to know where they're looking? He doesn't have a pupil, right? So if his head is turned, I don't know if he's looking at me or if he's looking straight forward or if he's looking to the side. It's very frustrating to figure out where he's looking, and your punishment for guessing wrong is probably getting 1 shot if you're at the right level when you're here, and having to restart all your progress from the beginning. It is such a weird, annoying punishment to have to restart the boss fight after making 1 simple mistake, and it tanks the boss fight for me. Like I said, I have a lot of difficulty telling exactly when I'm supposed to move based on where he's looking, right? And it's more of a trial and error thing. The first time he did that head bob where his head goes up and down, I had no idea what that was. I didn't know until the next run that means I can go, because why would I know that when he's basically looking at me when his head goes down? I would have no reason to believe that he wouldn't see me. I don't know. I don't know if that's a me thing. I don't know if this is a soul thing that I had issues with, but I really felt it was very difficult to tell where he was looking. Destroying the pillars is annoying too. It's not engaging at all. Sneaking around like a little rat on paper is really cool if they played it differently. I just find it to be very boring, and personally I think this boss fight is horrible. I actively dread this fight every single time I touch Demon Souls. I do think this fight is a bit better in the remake, but I've talked about everything in the original game, so I'm not going to give this special bonus points because it got fixed in the remake or whatever. It is just a horrible experience overall. So jumping back a little bit now to the Maneater fight, this fight I had very different experiences with. Both times I played through Demon Souls with the remake and the original. My first time ever fighting them, I felt that they were incredibly difficult and near impossible to fight. However, my most recent playthrough, they went down very easily on the first try. So in terms of difficulty, I'm not exactly sure where they fall, but in terms of design, they're okay. They look like humanoid, gargoyle-esque type creatures like you've been fighting already. These look a bit more human to me than stone. Their glowing eyes are really cool because the level's like a dark green tint, and when they fly far away, you only see the eyes in the distance and the green breath as they fly towards you. The snake tail also is quite iconic on these guys. It's very memorable. The fact you can cut it off is really cool as well. But the design overall is a bit on the boring side, and I feel like they look like an enemy you would see in the level as a sort of mini boss. I think the fact that you end up fighting 2 of them really amplifies this point of them feeling like a regular enemy instead of a boss. It is really cool having that second one fly in when the first one's around half health. It's unexpected, it takes you off guard, and it starts to make you nervous. But I think having 2 of them makes the design worse just because you're literally seeing a second form of it, so it feels even less like a unique boss because you're realizing, oh, there's just multiple of these people that are just here, I guess. Again, the most notable thing being the eyes. The rest of them is kind of like one matte color. To fit the gargoyle aesthetic, I get, but visually that's not the most pleasing thing to look at, especially in an area that's already extremely dark. Them being just a dark color that blend into the background makes them seem less of a boss level threat. The atmosphere of the fight's pretty cool. You're fighting on a fairly narrow bridge. Not so narrow that you'll fall off, but also narrow enough that you could get knocked off quite easily. There's a fire pit in the center, which I think is very important because it lets you figure out where on the bridge you are in relation to the fire, which is also giving off light, so you're naturally drawn to it. It kind of works itself as a sort of safe haven for you to rest up a little bit before you venture back into the dark to fight the Maneaters, which I like a lot. The OST of this fight is very mediocre. I feel like nothing about it really stands out as cool or interesting. It just kind of falls into the background. You really don't notice it. It just feels like a bass track. Then in terms of gameplay, I think the Maneater's moveset is fine. There's nothing about it that really stands out to me as anything insane. I like that the tail gets implemented a little bit into the moveset. He has a slam attack here and there. It's a fine fight. I like that you get to learn the Maneater moveset first by fighting one of them before the second one ends up coming out. This is some like Gohan, Goku, watch me fight kind of thing. And it works pretty well because I think it makes the second part of the fight when you're fighting two a little bit easier because you've already seen most of the moves at this point. But I will say that there is the dash attack move, which I totally hate and I think is stupid because not only do you then have to chase after him, which I don't like doing in a boss fight, it's also very likely to just come out of nowhere, hit you, and then you get knocked off the bridge, which is just the most annoying thing in the world. The scream attack is kind of cool. I like that he has a range ability because then when you're fighting two of them, even though one of them might be far away, he still might kind of hit you with the scream if you're getting a little bit too close, right? Usually with duo fights, unless the two bosses are made to work with one another, they don't work well, especially when you're just duplicating one enemy twice. But I do think that the Maneaters are passive enough to where, I don't know if their AI breaks, but sometimes they literally just fly around for no reason, fly super far away, fly back. I don't know why they do that, but it does give you enough space to usually fight one at a time. Sometimes you get unlucky and they don't do that and you have to fight both, to which it sucks, but you got to deal with it. So I think overall the Maneater's fine. Again, there's nothing about it that stands out too bad. It was really hard my first playthrough to where I would have put it in the meh tier just because it felt a little too hard, but this most recent playthrough, like I said, was a bit easier, so I don't really think it deserves to get knocked for difficulty. But yeah, it was a fine fight. So the Old Monk is a bit hard to rank because it is a multiplayer focused boss to where if you were playing when the servers were online on the original or you were playing the remake at launch, chances are you could be fighting an actual player, which I think adds a lot to the boss fight and really makes it a unique fight. Credit where credit's due. In terms of a gimmick, this is a fantastic idea that really utilizes Demon Souls' multiplayer system. However, nowadays, especially if you're playing the original on the PS3, you're never fighting another person. So instead you have to fight just an NPC boss, which kind of sucks. So the design of the boss itself, which I think is the old guy in the chair, is cool. He's like a rotted corpse, dried up looking guy with a very long gown outfit, which looks awesome. I like the arena that he's in. But the design of the NPC that you fight is kind of whatever, other than the yellow head wrap, which is goated and seen throughout the entire series. The rest of him is just kind of fine. Again, other than the head wrap, he's just a dude who's just fighting you, right? He's just another NPC that I would never think anything of outside of it being a boss. I could be wrong, but I'm also pretty sure the armor that he's wearing is the armor of that assassin NPC that kills all your other NPCs in the Nexus if you don't kill him first. Which is just kind of lame because he doesn't even have a unique set, again, other than the hat that you could get. So while he's design-wise not super unique, I will say that the atmosphere of the fight is very unique. I like the random chairs in the area that are all stacked up with the actual Old Monk over on top of them. I like that you're fighting essentially what I view as his minion. I don't know the lore behind this very well, so I could be totally wrong. But it just feels like you're fighting his D1 warrior instead of him because he's not a fighting kind of guy. Similar to the Maiden Goatstraea fight, albeit just worse. Now the OST for this fight is very unique and it's a bit harder for me to implement into the ranking because personally I don't like listening to it, but I think it fits the atmosphere and the boss really well. It's this sort of childish, annoying tone that just repeats itself as you're fighting the enemy, which fits really well because I don't think he's really meant to be taken too seriously, and it's kind of a whole subversion of expectation where you think you're gonna fight the old crippled guy in the chair, but realistically you're just fighting this minion dude instead. And it's the same thing with the OST where at one point it kind of gets away from that childish beat and that annoying beat towards something that seems grand, right? It's building up, and then all of a sudden the childish beat comes back in and you never really get to that ascension of the OST, which works really well for the atmosphere. And I kind of already touched on it, but the gameplay, you're just fighting an NPC. The NPC AI in Demon Souls, at least the original, is pretty terrible and easily exploited as long as you just distance yourself a decent amount. So the fight's not hard at all. You really shouldn't be losing unless you get caught in like a corner or something. But the gameplay is really boring otherwise. At this point, you've already fought so many NPCs that I feel like it's starting to wear off the cool factor and uniqueness of it. So I think it is a cool concept, but especially now that the multiplayer doesn't exist pretty much, it's just a meh fight overall. All right, now we're in the home stretch. So next is Penetrator, which is my favorite fight in all of Demon Souls. He is a non-gimmick fight. He's just a dude in armor that you are fighting in the classic Souls roll attack fashion. Penetrator's design could be seen as a bit boring because it is just a suit of armor, but I think the armor itself is very unique looking with all the accent marks on it, and he does kind of have that unicorn horn coming out of the top of the helmet as well, which always kind of stood out to me. This is one boss where I think his design in the remake and the original are just totally different people, because I had no idea when I played the remake originally that he's more so silver, like a dark silver in the original game, and he looks like a noble knight, right? A lot of the accents on his sword are blue, and similar to how the Tower Knight felt like you were attacking a kingdom and you were kind of the bad guy in that situation that they were defending against, it's the same with Penetrator. He feels like a last line of defense of, okay, let me take this royal knight, this highly acclaimed knight, and put him out there to fight. And this is kind of lost in the remake, because in the remake, the armor is more so like a blackish gray, and he has a red accent. So I thought the Penetrator was evil or something, I don't know, but playing the original game, he seems like a good guy. He literally kills the royal fat authority. And I don't want to talk about remake versus original too much. Like I said, that's not what this is about. I just felt like his design is so different that it was worth mentioning in case you've never played the original. In terms of atmosphere, this fight is so good because you think you're gonna fight the fat dude and he's standing there and you're ready to just absolutely obliterate him like you've been doing throughout the whole level. And then a little subversion of expectations, he gets stabbed from behind. I did not expect to fight Penetrator at all, but it was a very welcome surprise. The arena itself is pretty cool. I like the statues that are on the side of it. It's long and narrow, which works well because the Penetrator has a lot of dash attacks where he pokes forward with his sword. So having the longer corridor works pretty well for that. It is a bit boring visually, a lot of gray, there's no actual color, it's just stone surrounding you everywhere. I like that the statues can break, that's pretty cool because throughout the fight his sword is so long he's bound to break a couple of them. And then Penetrator does use the same music as Tower Knight. I don't think it's as effective here, it feels like Tower Knight's music more so than Penetrator's, but the song itself is good, so I'll give it a pass just for that. And then finally the gameplay of Penetrator is where I really think it shines. His moveset just feels so good to dodge, and out of all of the bosses in this game, even Flamelurker, who I think has a pretty decent moveset, none of them felt incredible to dodge. I think a lot of it is in part due to Demon Souls feeling a bit clanky with the dodging, but there's something about Penetrator sword swings where just diving under them feels so good. He has the perfect amount of telegraphing. He has that one move where he spins and you think the initial part of the spin is going to hit you, but then really he's just building up for the second part of it. And his moveset is just so fun. I really can't emphasize that enough. It just feels so good to dodge, even on the old Demon Souls system. It just feels like a great fight. And the difficulty of this fight is so perfect. This is the perfect FromSoft difficulty, I think. I think he might be a little easy in some of the later games where you're way faster, but for Demon Souls, he is the perfect level of difficulty. He's the perfect boss. His atmosphere could be a little bit better. I kind of wish he had his own track just because I think that track works better for Tower Knight, but really he's just great across the board. So finally for Old King Allant, which isn't the final boss, but he feels like the final boss, he's a good fight. I liked him a lot more on my first playthrough when I was playing the remake when that came out. I thought he was much better, but on this past playthrough, I kind of see a lot of flaws now. Firstly, with his design, I don't love it. He does look like royalty, and he looks unique with the entire white outfit with his white hair and his beard and whatnot, and he does look a little bit older. I like the way he walks with a lot of confidence while he pulls up to you. His sword, obviously very cool. It's an actual important sword, and there's kind of like a mist to him, and you could tell that something's not right about him. It almost looks like wings behind him at times that are like branching from his back, which I like a lot. My main problem is it's just a lot of white. I'm not a big fan of solo color schemes unless it's Maiden of Goatstraea, where I think it just fits with her so well of being a single white in an entire cesspool of corpse and decay. But with Allant, his arena's already kind of a bright gray, and then his very white outfit with his white hair and his white cloud behind him, it's just a lot of bright white. Not a big fan visually of looking at that. And speaking about that light gray arena, it's okay. It reminds me of the Penetrator arena a lot in terms of the dimensions of it. There's some rubble. His chair looks stupid because it's crumbled and it just looks like a block of stone and not really like a throne. And I don't understand if this is a throne room why it looks like this instead of having like more throny. I don't know how to describe it. It just doesn't really feel like a throne room. It just feels like a random room where there's a chair there that he sits in. The music though carries the atmosphere of this fight. It is a really good OST. It's very grand feeling, like you are fighting a very important royal person. It's all played on an organ, and there's a little bit of the main theme sprinkled in there a tad if you really listen for it. And I'm a sucker for that. As soon as a game incorporates the main theme into a boss theme, it just bonus points for that. Like, that's so awesome. And it just, the grandiose feeling of it is carried along with the gameplay of the fight, because Allant has some very intensive moves that are honestly sometimes a bit too fast for my liking. Again, Demon Souls' gameplay is a bit weh when it comes to like actually playing it, because it's pretty slow and a lot of it's spacing rather than reactionary rolling. But Allant has these moves where it's like a triple swipe, where it feels like it's a Dark Souls 3 move in terms of how fast it is. It just doesn't feel right. Some of his swings come out really, really quick. They're not like terrible or impossible to dodge or anything like that. It just is quite difficult. I'd say he's probably the second hardest boss in the game. And he also has this move, which I have to give credit where credit's due. I think is just such a fire move, where he grabs you and he just removes one of your levels. Like, that is so evil, just taking away player progress like that for making one simple mistake in a fight. And I'm pretty sure he could just keep spamming this. So you could just keep getting grabbed if you're bad at dodging it and lose 3 levels, which from like a design point of view is pretty terrible, because you're punishing someone who's not performing well by making it harder to perform well. But from like a gameplay design point of view, I do kind of just love the idea of that being a feature of this fight, where you are just getting punished so harshly. And it also does add to the fight itself. I think it's just one move where you get so afraid of it once you see it. Once you see the level loss pop up on your screen and you're like, oh shit, I don't know what just happened. So Allant is a good fight, great OST, very climactic fight, and it's a really good final boss fight, which is awesome, because now we're going to talk about the actual final boss fight. So the real final boss fight is the true form of King Allant, which is a blob on the ground that you just beat to a pulp. It's one of those fights where I don't know if you even can lose when you're actively horrible, right? It's just, you would have to stand there and let him beat you, and that's it, because there's no way you ever lose in an actual attempt. And I get, again, I'm a D1 story boss kind of glazer. Like, I keep glazing Maiden Goatstraea, right? I think that's an incredible boss, and it's literally just a story boss. But there's something about the final boss being a story throwaway fight that just rubs me the wrong way. His design is cool in the sense that he has the sword sticking out of him and he's all mutated and whatnot, but he's also just a black blob. This is like something you would see in the swamp, right? As just a regular enemy. It's nothing crazy. He's got like faces almost in him, or his spine or something. I don't know. You can't really tell. He's got these weird orbs on his face. I don't know. There's just a bunch of nothing going on, and everything that is going on, you don't know what you're looking at, which I guess is the point, but visually it's just not pleasing. You fight him in this water, very small arena with tree branches. The way in is cool because you're breaking the broken branches, but then the fight itself, it's just a very boring circle, nothing crazy going on at all. Atmosphere-wise, it is cool that he's talking to you. That's kind of a unique thing while you're beating him senseless. Him talking is cool, but my problem with it is that it covers the OST, which is really, really good. It's kind of a choir singing and these very deep, heavy thuds in the background. It's a really good final boss OST, if only the final boss was good enough for it. He does not deserve this OST. It should be given to another boss, because this OST is fire, and you can't even hear it because he's talking the whole time. And by the time you kill him and he's done talking, you're not going to hear the OST anyway. Gameplay wise, I already kind of touched on, but much like Phalanx, just stand in front of him and let him kill you. Otherwise, you're just going to beat him to death in like 10 seconds flat, because he's just extremely easy. It is kind of weird though. I say 10 seconds flat. Realistically, he does kind of have a lot of health, and I think it's so that you don't kill him fast enough so you can finish his dialogue. But it ends up just making it drag longer than it needs to, and you're just exposed to like a bad boss for longer, which sucks. I'm between calling him bad and terrible, because I think as a fight and a boss, he is bad. But since he's the final boss and he's this bad, he deserves to be terrible, because there's so much build up to him just for this. I don't know. Between the two of them, really, in either, I'll probably leave him in bad, because he doesn't necessarily annoy me and make me want to actively not fight him. It's just very disappointing. So here's the list of everything. I tried to be as fair as possible with these bosses when comparing them to one another. For instance, I don't want Vangoat Demon in the same tier as Phalanx, but I feel quite similar about those bosses, if that makes sense. So don't take the tiers too seriously. I think it is a good indicator of about how I feel about them and where I think they belong in terms of quality, but it's not objective, it's totally opinion based like I said. But yeah, that's all of Demon Souls, and I do plan on playing through all of the Souls games and making a tier list for each game individually, and then having a final tier list of them all compared to one another. It is a bit harder to compare them across. Like I said, I was keeping in mind the older games, so while I go through them, these rankings might actually change, right, if I realize that they are just not up to snuff with the rest of the series. But that's a bridge that I will cross when I get there. And this was just something I figured if I was passionate enough to write it down in my phone, I might as well make like a little presentation video about it, right? Because I love these games and I love these bosses, so that was that.